What's my tea bag say? Nature does not hurry, yet everything is accomplished. Today I want to talk about the thing, I think the most important thing that you can do for your creativity. And it is something that I, as a perfectionist, hate. But I really think that this is a tactic that anybody can use in order to get better and to succeed. I hadn't planned on making it so cozy, but I needed something for my throat. But let's get into it. So the number one thing all creative people need to succeed. There's actually a really nice, famous speech from Ira Glass that you may have seen, and I'll link it, of course. But it's about creativity and essentially that your first work is gonna suck, to be blunt. But specifically that there is a discrepancy between your great taste and what you know you would like to make versus the actual quality of the work that you're able to produce. And really the only way to close that gap is to produce more things. So you just have to keep producing over and over and over again until you get better to the point where you actually are creating things that meet your expectations. For instance, you've probably heard, if you want to be a writer, write. And that really applies to anything. So, if you want to be a painter, you have to paint and get better. If you want to be a basketball player, you have to play basketball. So it doesn't matter what medium you're looking at creating in or what kind of things you're trying to make. You can't think your way out of it. You actually have to do it so that you can see where you're at and then continually get better. And trust me, this is something that I'm saying as much for myself as anyone else, that you have to actually put in the reps in order to see improvement. No, my paper. So for example, a lot of times if I have an idea for a script, I really just want to keep thinking about it and plan all the characters in my head and maybe how the plot can play out. But I constantly have to remind myself how important it is to write it down and to get it out of my head, because it can only go so far in my head, and I always, without fail, think that I can figure it out in my head anyways. But it is so much easier when I just say, let's just see what we can get out on paper. And then that way you can really see everything you have, see the holes that might be in the plot or problems that you're going to have to solve. But it really makes it something physical and tangible that you can manipulate. Whereas if it had just stayed in my head, it still is kind of like, oh, well, it's this amazing idea and blah, blah, blah. I just have to do it. So it is important to get it all out there so that you have a chance of improving. And I share that example because I think it applies to so many different creative paths that if you are trying to accomplish something, it's not enough to intellectualize it. You have to implement it. As the only way forward, that is the only way to get better, is to just keep doing it. And another really great example of this comes from James Clear's book, Atomic Habits. I love that book, highly recommend it to any of you who want to check it out. But he discusses this photography class at the University of Florida. And there's this professor, Jerry Ullsman, sorry if I'm mispronouncing that, but he divides his class into two groups. So the first group he decides that he's going to grade on quality, and the other half he's going to grade on quantity. So how he does this is the quality group only has to take one photo for that whole semester, but it has to be the most amazing photo that you've ever seen. It's going to be graded on how good it is. Whereas the quantity group has to submit 100 photos for an A. And the really interesting thing, I think, is that he found that the higher quality images were actually produced by the quantity group. So that quantity group was actually experimenting and making mistakes and trying again, but the quality group was just theorizing about how to take the best photo. And so it really is true, as much as perfection is not the goal because it's not attainable, that saying of practice makes perfect really rings true, because you have to implement what you're learning and experiment and make mistakes in order to get better. I highly recommend the book. It's all about making small incremental changes to your habits for big payoffs in your life. I'll definitely link it in the description for anybody who's interested in checking it out. It's the same way when you look at great composers. You know, Mozart composed over 600 pieces of work and Beethoven over 700. And so these are just incredibly prolific creators that may only be known and famous for a few select works. But the fact that they went through all of these other lesser known iterations to get to where they are, I think speaks volumes. Volumes, because you need a volume of work. Okay. I think the secret to success for creative people is quantity. And I don't mean that for your quality to suffer. I mean that I think quality will come about from doing the thing that you want to do over and over and over again. So I think the big lesson here is to keep doing the work, keep creating, keep practicing, and you're going to get better. And soon you will have closed that gap between what it is that you want to create and what you're actually able to create. I'll leave you with one last quote, but I would love for you to practice implementing by letting me know in the comment section what's your biggest takeaway, or if you had an epiphany watching this, what are you going to take away and bring into your creative practice? The quote I'll leave you with is from Albert Einstein, and that's, "You never fail unless you stop trying."